The script that I was sent wasn't right for me, but the comic books were what I felt very cinematic. You know, it was still for kids, but it felt like it could be for the adults as well. It could be for me. Attack! The challenge was to shoot a film in 7 weeks with 4 creatures with radio-controlled functions and new technology everywhere, but it worked out. My mother was a script supervisor, they call it now. I left school quite early, got involved in clapper loading, camera assistant on films like Superman and A Bridge Too Far. And my mum was doing continuity on her films, but she was meeting and working with people like Warren Beatty and Barbra Streisand, and they were directing themselves in films, big films like Reds and Yentl. And she was their eyes and ears, really, not just the script supervisor. She was the keeper of the story, with them bouncing ideas off her. So she was kind of part directing the production. So they encouraged her to think about directing as well. And meanwhile, simultaneously I started doing music videos, and just because I was young in London at the WAG Club or 100 Club, or getting involved with young people who are into music, and I was working in the film, so I had access to cameras and rental and understood lenses and that sort of thing, and so I was kind of getting some very interesting work in that world of music videos, and getting onto, and I did the Human League Don't You Want Me, which led to Michael Jackson's Billie Jean, and that led to being offered Hollywood films. And I at the same time as my mother was kind of getting to be noticed for her contribution in films, and therefore given the chance to direct. And in fact, we directed our first features in the same year. She did Secret Places and I did Electric Dreams. She was a tremendous influence on me. Turtles I first heard about from Anthony Minghella. We'd made Jim Henson's The Storyteller together. He's not with us anymore, really sad, lovely man. And he just said, look, I'm talking to this company, Golden Harvest, and they're interested in my play, Made in Bangkok, because it's set in their part of the world. And would you, they'd show me this comic book for Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. He said it's completely nuts. And they say, well, they're thinking of doing it either as drawn animation for the Turtles or as foam suits. And I said, well, I'm friends with Jim Henson, which I was at that point, and I said, there's only one person that could do this. So I put it to him, and he said, look, Fraggle Rock and Muppets are what we work in and known for, and kids and things. And there's a lot of, in those comic books, there's a lot of violence. There's a lot of fighting and violence, and how can I don't know whether I can bring our creature shop to that sort of a project. And we talked about it for a week or two, over a period of time. And I said, look, in the end, I said, it's the tone. It's all about the tone. And I think the tone I'm going to make it, and I understand it with, is going to be really sweet, heartfelt, about family, and be something that you'd be proud of.
It's a Kodak moment.
And obviously then the budget was quite different, because no one knew quite what the budget was then. No one knew how much it would take to get these suits and get this puppeteering technology that hadn't been done before. Their side of it grew, their estimates grew, and pretty close to filming, we knew we were into a $7 million film, not a $3 million film, and that it would be done in America, and we would get the creature shop out there. We were left to make the film. I was completely involved in the casting, so it was all my choice. Elias Cortez or Judith, or they were all my choices, from Lynn Cresswell, our casting person in New York, who was great. Brought them Sam Rockwell, like kind of tiny part.
You got any cigarettes? Regular or menthol?
When I got Jim involved, I told him I didn't want him to read the script because it wasn't right yet, and I said but we were getting somebody new on board. So I found through our development person at Limelight, we had a new writer came into it, Todd Langan. He'd been working on The Wonder Years, which was about a young boy and his, 11 years old, I think he was, and he had wrote some great dialogue for him. And so we brought him on, and I spent a month with Todd before the creatures were built, just working on, starting again with the script and tearing out the pages from the original comics and putting them on a pinboard and saying, this is where we should go. And we also found we needed another thematic layer to it all. Partly we'd up the theme of family, we'd up that, and we would find another theme, and that theme became what was Shredder up to. And there was an article in a Philadelphia newspaper, I think it was at some point, about a guy who had manipulated these young kids into stealing for him and them. And he created, like, it's a Fagin character who, you got to pick a pocket or two, and that felt like the theme, the missing theme we had. That's what the Shredder's up to.
You are here because the outside world rejects you. This is your family. I am your father.
And then I thought, we're going to make this, no problem. The studios will see how good the script is, and we'll make it. But I was wrong about that, because the script was flying around all the studios. They were throwing it all back, saying, nah, not for us. And we were panicking a bit, because it meant that we'd made a couple of sales. We'd gone to Cannes, and we made a sale to Germany and then one to France. So they were helping, but they were obviously, it wasn't the money, it was just a sale that would come in once we delivered the film. So it was touch and go, and it looked for some weeks, 6 weeks out from shooting, and lots of the creatures being built and everything. Even then it looked very shaky whether we were going to ever get onto production. And luckily New Line came along and said for a steal they got $2 million. They got the rights, and but that was the $2 million missing link that we needed for the rest of the budget. The back lot was fantastic because it was New York street. Without that, we would have been really hard to have made it a New York film. We had a back lot with a New York set that needed renovation. It had been built 4 or 5 years earlier at Dino De Laurentiis' studio, but was a place where we could dig big holes to do the manhole covers and the drains leading to the sewers, which all worked really well there. And then we ran into New York for 4 days just to get a piece of New York to try and cement New York as the real place where you're watching the rest of it.
Hey, Mikey, did you ever think about what Splinter said tonight? I mean, about what it would be like, not having him.
Audio on set was unusable anyway because there was a puppeteer saying the lines and the performer inside the suit saying the lines. So they were not quite in sync, but they were pretty close, but it was two voices, two different voices. And it had to be that way because you had to have that, that movement and that action. So we were always going to replace the voices. That was always going to happen. And they were, that was always a tricky thing. There were 17 functions, I think, within the servers of the face, the eyebrows, the mouth, the eyes, the blinks, the frowns. They were all parts of, a puppeteering chemistry, of orchestra, really. And that was always going to be a challenge to make that work, to make it right, to make it look right and feel right. But they were all the best puppeteers you could possibly get, luckily. So the joy of making it was that they were all great team, great people, all fighting for one cause, all trying to make this extraordinary little film in the time and in the budget, and so that was all really enjoyable. I mean, we'd have days where there was a U.S. Air Force base nearby in North Carolina, and they were on certain radio frequencies when they were landing, and it would sometimes interfere with the radio frequency on the face motion, and so you get a face, a Ninja Turtle face going like, and the eyes blinking and then shutting and freezing, the jaw locking, and unusable, obviously. Well, Brian Henson, we took a lot of the team from Storyteller, from the series, and Brian was the dog, a puppeteer, brilliant puppeteer, and I said to him, look, will you direct second unit? What we're going to be able to do is you're going to have to do some fighting, and because we're not going to be able to shoot. We'll get so far, as far as we can. We get the staging done, we get the dialogue done, and then I'm going to have to hand it over to you. So it was all storyboarded though, so he knew what we were after. And working with the stunt people, they were brilliant. So they'd have ideas, and it was all part of the planning. We were left with a number of scenes and pages that we didn't shoot in the script, and the producer said, look, Golden Harvest said, look, we can't afford any more. You can't go another week, so you can't do those scenes, basically. So the schedule had to be pulled out, and so we were left going back to LA with most of the film. I was very pleased with most of it, but these missing holes in the way I wanted to tell the story, and they were missing, and it actually led to a bit of a fallout with me and Golden Harvest, and because I really wanted to do it, and I said to Jim, I showed him a cut of how we were getting on, and I said, if we had another $750,000, we'd have another week of shooting. We could make it 10% better, and I said, and I think that would be great. That would be worth it. Anyway, we ended up. Golden Harvest said they couldn't afford that, and they didn't want to do that. And so Jim Henson said, why don't you take it to Jeffrey Katzenberg in Disney? He's my friend. I'll call him. You can take it. And I was a bit worried about doing that, but we did it. We took it to him 3 times. Actually, he saw it 3 times, and then Golden Harvest found out, and that was the end of our relationship. Sally had finished her cut. She left as well. There was a few blank holes that they, filled in by chopping them together. But at that point, it was too hard. I mean, I loved Sally. She was brilliant, absolutely brilliant. And she went on to make Reservoir Dogs and Pulp Fiction and do all those beginnings of Tarantino. And I saw her. She's not with us anymore, unfortunately. It was really sad. But I saw her about 10 years ago. I was at an awards show at the BAFTAs. And I suddenly hear, Steve, and Steve, what are you doing? And I turn around, it's Sally Menke with Quentin, and she's like, she turns to Quentin and says, "It's Steve from Turtles," and he went, "Oh my God!" He came up and he said to me, and she said, "Tell him what you told me," and he said, "Well, we were doing working with Uma, and Uma said, 'Who's editing?' And I said, 'Sally's editing,' and she said, 'Who's Sally?' And I said, Sally made Donatello fight," and so he had this. He saw Ninja Turtles, loved the way she cut it, and brought her on board for life. Actually, I didn't see it for 20 years. And then when screening at the Prince Charles, and I sat and watched it, and I thought, I'm really proud of it.
What the heck was that?
Looked like sort of a big turtle in a trench coat. You're gonna look Gladio, right?
And it's really kind of stands up in that, there's some rough edges, but somehow what comes through even the rough edges is a heart. So I'm really proud of what it is. I had no idea that 35 years later we'd be talking about it, and it's still loved by a lot of fans, and it was a great experience, and it's nice to know that it hasn't been lost in time.